Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev, and today we are doing our next workshop. This time the workshop is devoted to the playing through the A file. It's quite an important element of a middle game play. Okay, so while we are waiting for more participants to join our workshop, you can share any of your news. Do you have anything to share? So do you guys play the games on chess.com or anywhere over the board? Can you share your last results? Okay, fine. So people are joining. Let me share then. Well, I'm right now working on a course devoted to the Italian game. So just yesterday, I was recording a chapter devoted to one of the lines. So it's a very detailed course that is going to be released on Chessable, and I'm going to you can study it in two ways. First of all, if you are quite experienced player, you may need all the details. If you like Italian, if you want to play with white especially, then it does make sense for you to go into the details. Those of you who don't really care much about the openings, for example, your rating is like 15, 1600 on chess.com, you may just watch the overview of each chapter and model games. There are model games played by grandmasters and even some of my model games. I think I added maybe 3 games that I played myself, and others are grandmasters games. Anyway, I don't know when it's going to be published because I'm currently working on recording. I recorded maybe just 10, no, 15% of the course. However, I I I'm sure I can finish in August. So that's my goal. I'm going to finish in August. Okay, fine. So let's start. People are still joining, but let's talk about the play through the A file. First of all, what you should remember. Well, this is a typical strategy, a middle game strategy when you open the A file, and you should operate with your major pieces, with your rooks and your queen through the A file. By occupying the A file, you may let your pieces to invade the enemy territory. That's the key idea of the play through the A file. What else can be done? You can even triple your pieces, for example, 2 rooks and the queen behind, the so-called Alekhine's battery. On the A file, you can attack weaknesses. For example, if you imagine, let's just make a few more moves. A4 was played, this, and rook a3. So b3 is a weakness, so you can attack it. The rook located on the open file can be even an outpost. For example, like it is in this position. If, let's say, white chooses something like that and then takes on a3, then you can either take the rook with your other rook, or take with a pawn, creating a passed pawn. So, well, we did already a workshop devoted to the outposts, and the rook on a3 occupies an outpost, and you can either convert, you can trade rooks and still have the rook on a3, or you can convert it to a passed pawn and distract some of the enemy pieces. Of course, it doesn't win the game itself, but this is a very promising strategy anyway. Fine, what else? Once once you invaded the enemy camp with your pieces, you can also threaten the king. For example, this was likely to happen in this exact game, but black didn't manage to attack properly. What you have to remember when you do this play through the A file, you have to remember that if you locate your pieces on the A file, your pieces no longer affect what is going on other side of the board. For example, let's say your rook is on A3, it cannot defend the 7th rank or the 6th rank if needed. That's why such a strategy should be played if you see that your opponent counterplay on the other side of the board is doesn't work, or is, for example, not sufficient to create any danger. Well, having the rook into the enemy territory through the A file can provide you with a significant advantage, especially in the end game. You can also have some tactical ideas based on the pins. For example, capturing the pawn on c4 with your major piece here would be a possible tactical strike. What else? Well, not in this exact position, but in some positions, having the bishop, let's say, fianchetted on the open diagonal, I mean this bishop, if it somehow happened, would prevent the exchange of the rooks, and that would reinforce your activity through the A file. So these are basic things that you have to remember about playing through the A file. Let's now get into examples. So first of all, let's take a look at this position. It's a strategically complex position, approximately equal. It's hard to say who is better. Both sides have protected pass pawns in the center. The knight on d5 is very strong, but the knight on e6 does also a helpful blockading function. This bishop is likely to be better than this bishop. So white wants to do the attack on the king side, and because black doesn't have enough space on the king side, they are trying to attack on the queen side, which looks like a possible plan. So they started with rook a7, g5, b4, bishop goes to g3. Well, I don't know if that was a helpful move. I think they could already start with this, but bishop g3 should be played anyway, because the h file should be open for the rook. Because let's say they play h5, h4, h5, then what? The rook should be there to play g6, a5, h4, and a4 was played. Rook goes to g2, so preparing the attack. A takes b3. So when you play like that, you should take on b3. Because, well, if you just push a3, well, you may keep pressure. You may keep tension in this position, for example. Well, let me fix these settings. Okay, and bring the second rook, and then only capture to be able to invade the enemy camp right away, either on a2 or a1. Not capturing neither now nor in future makes almost no sense, because if you play a3, how does it help you? The position is blocked on the king side, your rook is passive, and here, for example, they can only attack on the king side. Maybe you can withstand such an attack and draw the game, but actually we are playing for a win. In most cases, we are playing for a win. So take, and rook a3. So black achieved their main goal. They opened the file. Nobody can bother the rook. There is no possibility to chase it away. So now they are going to invade the enemy camp with the rook. So a2 or a1, b3 is a weakness. But other pieces definitely should assist that rook on a3, because the rook, just one rook on a3 is not really doing much, especially if everything else is protected. Also, you have to keep in mind that they are going to do something like that. However, first it was bishop f2, trying to bring the bishop to the place of action to open the g file. Queen goes to a7. Rook d3, defending there. Check makes sense because, sorry, I touched something. Okay, so check makes sense because then you can attack the b3 with your pieces. For example, in this position, if h5, black would continue with queen e1 and they would attack the king, and it would also help black to defend the position of the king through the h file. So that's why after... Okay, just a sec. This is what we have. Let me take an additional keyboard. Here it is. So when I use my original keyboard, I'm touching a touchpad and it scrolls. So rook d1, they have to defend the first rank. Rook b2, creating a pin. It's not really a pin. But trading your active rook, what's the purpose? Bishop f1, and now you have to trade the rooks, but you can get your queen into the enemy camp. So this queen irritates your opponent, creating potential threats, especially on b3. Rook takes b2, queen takes b2, check. Now the king has to move. And what would you suggest for black? So it seems that the queen is already in the enemy camp, but it is stuck. Any suggestions? d3, rook d3, knight d4. Yeah, I agree. It does make sense. It's a pawn sacrifice, but let's see how it goes. Well, what I don't like about this position is that they can try to trade queens. Queen f2, it's this. And then b3 is still vulnerable. Maybe they can just play queen e3. So queen e3, what happens? This is protected, this is protected. How to continue? It seems that you can only bring the rook to the game. And actually, you'd better bring the rook to the game before you play d3. But then they play queen d3. If you play rook a7, it's already this, rook b1, and you have to move the queen and you lose on f5. So that's why before doing these active actions, let's do this. And this is where white tried to play for a draw. White was repeating the position. So they did a few repetitions and then the queen went back. Nobody claimed the draw. I don't know why actually, because the position was repeated several times. Rook d1, well, at least this position was repeated. Yeah, 3 times. 5 times actually. And queen e8 was played. Why? With the attempt to play for a win. So now it's rook a7. It's not Alekhine's battery, but it's still a very strong possibility. Rook a7, rook invades the enemy camp. So bishop f2 to close the second rank, to bring the rook to the h file. Rook a7 and queen f3. Why queen f3? To play h5. And what do you think? This is a critical moment of the game where black made a mistake. I cannot say that this mistake is crucial, but it was better first to think about the consequences of rook a2 move and black activity. What do you think? Is there anything that white can do, and we'd better do some prophylaxis? So queen b8, what's the purpose of queen b8? Knight g7, knight h5. Well, knight g7 would make a lot of sense with knight h5 ideas to bother the queen's position. This is where I agree. Rook a3 anticipating the queen swap to f3. So rook a3 right away. If you play such a move, how do they play? Okay, maybe they can start the attack that side, and after g takes h5 play this move. Or even rook d3 to take here with the queen. So I actually think that it was better for black to play h5 themselves. How does it work? Well, if they don't take, but play something else, it's definitely rook a2, queen a3, and a strong attack. But if they do take, then it doesn't look like a serious problem for us. We can play queen b7, and then cover everything and capture this pawn later. For example, well, how to play? Let's say if they play knight f6, we can just take on f6. Pawn takes queen f7. This is hanging, this is hanging. Which en passant? Ah, yeah, g takes h6 is en passant move. Okay, if let's say queen b7, king g2 just a prophylaxis, then queen h7, and this is lost. And there is always invasion, so the black here can attack from both flanks. By doing this, we allow white to play h5 move, and this is where their counter attack can be decisive. And I think that black lost the game because of this counter attack actually. So what did happen? h5 wasn't played, instead it was rook d3, and rook d3 doesn't look like a good move. Rook b2, bishop goes to g1, and queen e1. It seems that white is in trouble now. That's right. But, well, now they save it. What do you think? By doing the next two moves, black turned the position from completely winning to absolutely losing. What do you think? What is the black's winning strategy in this position? Well, this is winning position. Queen f1 with queen b1. Yeah, queen b1 makes sense. Queen f1 with multiple threats. Okay, queen f1, and what are these multiple threats? Ah, this is the threat. Fine. So rook d1. Isn't your queen trapped? Well, this move is a possibility, of course. But then I don't know if it favors black, because rook a1, and now they can invade your camp. So the pawn on the d file is dangerous, but I can always sacrifice a knight for that pawn at the very least, because it seems to me that with rook a6 I either win a knight or win a bishop. Okay, so no, queen f1 doesn't seem like it's such a good move. Try to promote the b pawn. How to promote the b pawn? What do you mean? Okay, I see there are nice suggestions. Knight g7, knight h5. I see them on YouTube. I think so. Queen b1 is the best. Yeah, queen b1 is the best. Set up pieces to attack on b3. Okay, so let's say well, black queen goes there. Queen takes. Are we forced to do this move? Maybe let's. Yeah, I think we are. So rook takes, and well, rook d3 looks good already. But what about this move? So then what? To take on b3? Okay, yes, but then how do you play against this move? Because once the knight moves, my next move is this or that. Yeah, but doesn't really change the position much. Okay, sorry, I was reconnected. I don't know why it happened. So, well, what then? So the pawn on b3 is captured with a check. The king moved to g2. But how to solve this problem with rook and with knight being hanging and the bishop being hanging too? Okay, so let's push d3. Let's push d3, but then knight take there. And after d2, I cannot stop it. That's... Yes, you're right. But what if I stop it with this move at the moment and then capture the knight? So I'm ready to sacrifice my bishop. Okay, so, but you sacrifice the knight then. So d2. Oh, no, 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 no. Wait. I mean, not d2, but check. King f3. King f3, there is knight d4. Okay. Let me play king g3 move instead. So d2, right? Bishop takes d2, rook takes d2, rook takes g6. I'm threatening with this. Well, but then I just put my rook behind. Well, even if you play b2, I can just put the rook behind and I just stop the pawn. Okay, pawn takes. Oh, the rook takes, doesn't matter. Well, okay, so okay, then I take with a rook and you cannot stop it. Maybe you mean no, b2 no, b2 then you cannot connect. So now even if you take, the c is too far. Okay, so no, it doesn't work like that. It seems that it's very optimistic. Also, instead there was rook d3 that would cement the position. So queen f1 is not required. Queen b1 is a better move. What does queen b1 do for the position? So there is still the same threat. How does it work this time? No, there is no such a threat at the moment. So queen b1, for example, what happens? So you add pressure there. And what are you threatening? Well, at the moment, not really much. Let's see. So, for example, if h... Oh, you are threatening. You are threatening with knight g7. Exactly. So knight g7, knight h5. I don't think that knight f6 is so good. Knight f6, rook f2, king takes f2. Yeah, the king takes. So anyway, let's say they play h5. G takes h5 works. And then what? The queen cannot be distracted. And if, I don't know, for example, something like that, something like knight f6, there should be a tactical strike. Which strike? Knight f4? Yeah, knight f4. Knight f4. How does it work? So, for example, well, it seems that you have to take. Because if you don't take, let's say you play queen e8 or queen b7, which is a very nice attack, then it's queen d3 check first. If here, yeah, the rook is hanging, yes, absolutely. But I thought that maybe white can checkmate faster. No, they cannot, because if the king goes there, it's queen h3 and rook b1 with checkmate. So that's why they have to take. But if they take, it's rook f2. And then you have to block with a queen, which also leads to a disaster. That's why you have to take with... No, this is... Okay, we can go back to it. Just let me see. So rook f2, queen takes f2, and queen d3, and I think black is winning. So, well, there is no possibility to infiltrate. Playing this move at least leads to the trade of the queens. Maybe even a better move. For example, this. I don't see it now, but maybe this. If this, which is the only move, then check. Yeah, then check. Yes, so black is winning. What's the purpose of this check? I want to take on e5. And then take there. I don't think black should trade queens. Okay, so I don't think black should trade queens. Queen e1, if king f4, I can take on h4. Can you still see my screen? Because it seems that today my computer... Where is white? White is up a pawn. Where? Black is up a pawn. Okay, sorry, today I experienced some technical issues. I don't really understand why. Well, because I'm doing exactly the same thing that I was doing before. And, well, okay, anyway. Let's see. So, here, who is a pawn up? Well, obviously, black wins. Black wins because what? King f4, its queen takes h4. And it's over. Well, it should be over. The king has no moves. Then what? If the king goes... Yeah, they have to sacrifice material. Yes, and then you can trade queens there, right? But let's talk about this line. When he goes to, let's say, g2, then you can take the pawn on e5, and in my opinion, it looks sufficient. There is what? There is a pin. However, just queen e7 stop. Yeah, yeah. You take, trade queens, and win. Oh, okay. No, let's take bishop g5. It's mate. No, queen f8 is not mate because the king is on the way. So the king is blocking it. Yeah, well, it's winning anyway. So what does it tell us? It tells us that knight f6 isn't a good move and knight f4 is a real threat. Moreover, having the knight on h5 is quite beneficial. So queen b1 was a good move, and after queen b1 they should play h5 themselves, and then we take it. And the queen cannot be distracted. I don't really see how they can continue the attack. But just a few tempi, a loss of a few tempi decided the game. So rook b1 is a mistake. What did happen with this move? With this move, they played knight f6, which is fine. And the second mistake is rook h1, completely neglecting this weakness on h7. This is the end. So what did black wanted with this move? So looks like he was doing really well before. He opened the A file, he invaded the enemy camp with his pieces, but then he didn't know what to do. When you play through the A file and invade the enemy camp, it's not only about the attack of the enemy king. For example, like rook h1, queen f1, rook h3, and so on. It's also about weaknesses. So you're trying to attack weaknesses and then pass the game to the end game, in which you can either get a passed pawn or win a pawn on b3 or something like that. Fine. So here, after rook h1, it's obviously queen b7 with a deadly threat on h7. Yeah, technically b3 can be attacked 3 times because the knight can join a5. Right. So knight g7 blocking the attack, but it's already over after queen f7. So they could deliver a check on g1, and capturing would lead to a perpetual check. So king moves to f3, and this is where black resigned. Why did black resign? Because of multiple threats. Well, checkmate on g8, checkmate on f8. So, for example, bishop cannot capture the knight because of a checkmate on f8. They can deliver the second check with this move, but after knight d5, there are at least 2 more threats. They cannot parry them both simultaneously. That's why the position is completely lost. Is it clear? Okay, thank you. So, just playing queen b1 would lead to a win, attacking weaknesses, paralyzing the activity of white pieces, improving the knight like that. This is what black should be doing. Instead, he was too focused on the attack of this king, but the king wasn't so weak. Instead, this king on h8 was a problem. Let's now take a look at the next game. Capablanca was playing against Karel Trebel. I don't know who is it, but look at this position. So looks like this time we not only play through the A file, but we have the H file. And every time we capture, they take, and this time it leads to a rook trade on h8. But what would you suggest for white to do? H7 is the object of the attack, but just attacking h7 looks like not sufficient because you can attack it with 2 rooks. Well, you can actually bring the queen there too, but is it enough? Well, maybe. How? It's protected 3 times. I don't think you can. h6 is a suggestion. Good point. h6 is a good move in terms with the idea to trap the rooks. Possible, but you'd better keep h6 for a little later stage of the game. In the game here, white played b5. What's the concept? To open the a file and then play h6 and trap the rooks. Because if you play h6 so early, they play king f8, and then after b5 they may not open the position on the queen side. They may try to keep it close. So, or maybe open just play this move, for example, bishop c8, king e7, and try to bring the rooks back. So you'd better keep this option for a better position. That's why b5. What did happen in the game? Uh-huh. I see, but well, what can we take here? Then take on h8? No, it doesn't look like a possible strategy. What else? Yeah, it's actually possible, but what we can do is play h6, so king f8, let's say, and then there is only one rook there, and we can open the position. But I also think about doing this move, so let me decide. Queen c3, then what? Ah, knight e5. Knight e5 to trade and then take. Possible. Yes, then let's say queen d8. How does it help us? Well, maybe this time we can play knight e5. So, because, well, if we trade knights, now we are threatening with h takes g6. Because h takes g6, we take on h8. But the problem is that they will connect rooks. And now h takes g6 doesn't look so strong. Well, maybe it's still fine. I am thinking about capturing on a6 here. What do you think? How does queen c3 help you? What do you mean? How? But there is a pawn on a6. Maybe with the g then. But what's the difference between h6 now and h6 in that position? So h6, but they have a bishop. So let's say even king g8, for example. Oh, okay, so let's talk about this line. Queen is 7, queen c3. Okay, let's say you want a free move. Let it be a free move. Let's say rook b8. So then you want to take there. This is quite unpromising because it's an extra attack on h8. After you take the bishop, you also threaten to take on h8 with h take g6 and so on. So they have to take with this. So king g6 looks very suspicious because bringing the queen to h5 is already checkmate. So let's say king g8, then you play rook g1, then bishop goes there and occupies g6. So looks like the position is so close that you cannot make any breakthrough. At least you are not winning, but it seems to me that you are even losing if he finds a way of how to make it more open. Maybe he will play d. Well, maybe it can be actually a fortress, but well, bishop h5. No, I don't know. I don't know. I think black is winning, but I don't see a winning plan. B5, rook a8, b6. Okay, let's go back because we still have one scenario to go over. So I think it can be bishop a6. What's your opinion? Because if rook takes, then I was about to take on g6. To take on g6 and then go to h7 with my rook. So I don't think they can ignore it. And I don't think that the queen can move. So let's say they take with the king. Rook h6. King g7, g6. This is what I want. So, okay, let's say they save their queen. take, maybe too late. Let's bring the queen to the game. Queen a1. Queen a1 to bring the queen there or there. 2 squares. Well, looks quite promising. What's your opinion? Because I want to take, and then I want to bring the queen, either to h1 or to a1. Well, okay, let me just play something. So take. If this move, this leads to checkmate, so they have to take. You take. They take with the king, because bringing the king back means you can play queen h1, and this is a disaster. It's a winning position, of course. So that's why here the king should capture on g6. And now this move. Is it a win? In my opinion, it seems so. Yeah, so bishop a6, what if pawn takes on a6? Then b7, that was my suggestion. What's the difference? So if they play just a rook move somewhere on the d file, then you take there. And now, after trading all these rooks, you have a passed pawn that you can immediately promote. So that's why they have to take with the king. But if they take with the king, it's basically the same strategy. Wait, maybe let's bring the queen first. No, let's do this, and then bring the queen. With which move? G6, you think? G6, but G6 still works. Yes, actually, you're right. I think it's G6, because you're threatening to win a queen. And if they take, you still promote. Yes, it's a winning position. So looks like bishop a6 works. b6 was a clever move. Thanks for suggestion, because I didn't look at this move originally. Okay, so knight a5 is a possible strategy too. Okay, so rook a8 doesn't work so well, but then looks like this move deserved a lot of analysis, because my original plan was to capture on a6, then continue with this, and then try to remaneuver my rooks back, and for example occupy this, pressure this, bring the second rook to the second rank, to the b file, I mean to the b2, to reinforce. That would be a slower strategy, but I still think it would be winning. Because let's say rook b1, even if king e7 is played, I finally occupy this outpost. What they can do this, but capturing is a blunder. Or if I want, I can reinforce it. So which move to play? King g3? Yeah, let it be king g3. And then I can bring the rook there. So let's say they move to escape from a discovered attack. Then I play this move. And I'm threatening to take on a6. So maybe a5, but then this move. So I'm threatening to take, to trade 2 rooks and capture on a5, which guarantees a winning position. My king cannot be attacked from the back rank, neither from the second rank nor from the first rank, because of my knight's position. So I think that, well, let me just show you. I can hardly imagine what they can do. Let's say this is winning, because even if he invades, then what? I just simply promote. At the well, yes, but at the cost of a knight, I would escape then, even if it was possible. So right now, I'm going to capture with a knight. And then if you want to reach, well, you cannot reach the first rank, but let's say you can. Okay, so you want this sacrifice. Okay, so queen c3, I played queen c3, so you want to take on g5. Okay, knight takes g5. So now actually, I even don't really need to take on b8. I'm playing with extra piece. So knight h7, knight f6, h7. So we shouldn't talk about such sacrifices because there is no immediate win. So it may work, but may work only occasionally if white overlooks something. Here, even a rook exchange is not required. And even if the very best scenario happens, let's say the knight took and the queen invaded the first rank, it's not a perpetual check. There is also a bishop that covers at least f1. So of course queen b1 cannot be played, but let's say it can be. So, and the knight, and they, well, okay, I spend the tempo on something like that, then queen g1 is played. It's still not a perpetual check. The king escapes. Here, maybe. It's also possible to block like that. Depends on how you're going to check it. So this, another check. Bishop blocks, no more checks. The knight is a very... the knight sacrifice is a very responsible move. You definitely shouldn't do it if you see that there is no exact way of how to do a perpetual check or win material back. So b5 was played, a takes b5. C takes b5 was possible, but it seems to me there is no difference. So take with a bishop, bishop takes. Then h6, this pawn falls. Let me actually make these moves on the board. So bishop, because this bishop on d7 was really not as good as the bishop on d3. So bishop takes, pawn takes, then h6, king goes to f8. And now a few tempi are required. Also c6 can be played. I'm not sure if I want to play it right now, because then just king e8. No, I don't. But rook c1 or b1? Yeah, b1. B1 and... But they play queen c6 in both cases. But at least now... Yes, c6 they can play. Well, take the pawn first and then rook c1 makes sense, because if now, then what? They can do this very passive defense, but still hold the position. I actually still prefer white here, but well, there is a more simple way to win. So let's just win without sacrifices. Let's play this move. Queen c6, and we can just add pressure. How do we add pressure on this pawn? By bringing our second rook. Queen e8, king e7, then. Queen a5 seems like a better move because we take on b5 directly. But if this move, king e7, rook b5, and then they have enough time to play rook e8. So that's why maybe even there is a better way to play. Okay. Why do you want the king to move? Because the king moves means they can bring their rook to the game quicker. So yeah, I would rather, if to play queen e7, I would suggest playing it right away. But again, then what? They play king e7. So I think that it's rook b1, let's say, queen c6, and in this position queen a5 seems like a better move, because queen a5, king e7, queen b5, and you threaten to take the second pawn, because this endgame with a protected pass pawn is obviously winning. How do they defend it? Because now rook e8 no longer works. Rook b8. And then we can bring the second rook to the game. And this second rook goes that way. And they still lose the pawn there. They can try doing this, but knight e5, and then c6. There is a pin or there is a strong attack. So it's losing anyway. Something similar happened in the game. So let's stick to what happened. h6, yeah, this capture, king goes to e7 to let the rook out, and b6 was played. Then, getting the control over the file, where does the queen go? It goes to d8 or c8, and then it blocks the activity of the rooks, but on b8 it actually does the same. So rook a1. Now, if queen e8, which looks like a possible strategy, it's simply queen b2 or queen b2. And then you play rook a7 successfully. So that's why they don't want to lose a tempo with queen e8, so rook c8. Again, why queen c? Because the position is closed. So what on the king side, what they want to do is bring the rooks there and make a king move. Queen b4, rook goes there, rook a7. Now they escape with the king, and we activate our other rook. King g8, rook a4. Why this move was played? Who can tell me? Why rook a4 was played? Yes, to make a Alikhine's battery. Yeah, Alikhine's gun. Okay, thanks. Yeah, exactly. I think this is the official name of this battery. So queen a3, that's right. The a file is completely captured, but now our task is to break the fortress. So let's say king g8. What do you think? Let's come up with a plan. What for? With any of their pawns, you have nothing. So what I don't want you to do is to spend time, because ah, well, if so, you have to play e4 with your queen being already there. That sounds like a possible plan, but it seems too many sacrifices. So you play queen c3, you play e4, they take, you take with a bishop, they take, you play d5, but they still have defense. And you lost a piece, so it's unlikely to work then. Without the piece, you may not win. What for? But d5 still works. With e5, he blocks the attack. Okay, so he takes with a knight and then plays rook d7 to cover it. No, well, it's so such sacrifice should be considered as the last chance. And if it doesn't work, then don't play it. Just draw the game. Well, because this sacrifice. No. That this is not all. So this is actually a very how to say? It's a very important feature of your playing style, the way how you handle the positions. And it is required to fix it because you calculate and spend a lot of time on these candidate moves. But before even thinking about such sacrifice, you should figure out how does it work, and even if you achieve what you want, does it still work? If not, then you shouldn't start calculating. So imagine you have queen on c3, you push the pawn. Does it lead to a checkmate? No, they have a 5. So then, okay, how do I deal with f5? I cannot quickly manage it. Yes, thank you. Not king g2, but king g3, but you're on the right direction. So, well, even if you achieve it, you are not checkmating. Moreover, your opponent has so many ways of how to either avoid accepting the sacrifice or defend, make his position more secure. So, for example, after e4, he can ignore e4. You want to play e5? Fine. You want to take? Fine. What does it open? The e file? Well, maybe. Also, with e4, you just lose a pawn on e4 and the enemy queens invade your camp. So there should be a lot of preparation to play like that. And even after you manage to get all of that, so let's say king g3 defending there is still e5 which stops your attack. And you are already down a bishop in such a situation. Moreover, e4 they take, let's imagine the queen is on c3 and you take with the bishop. What if they don't take your bishop? What if they play something else? Well, what do you get? Now with your bishop you can capture on g6? Well, it doesn't seem to work. Moreover, there can be some counterattacks based on the fact that you hang your bishop. So he may sacrifice his knight on g5 or on h6 and then capture your bishop. And all these have to be taken into account. And because the vast majority of the games you play are blitz games, this is what you definitely shouldn't do in a blitz game. You shouldn't calculate such sacrifices that you are not sure are working. Instead, imagine the position that you want to reach. And if you see that in that position you can win and you don't see how he defends, then yes, you start considering this sacrifice. If not, then don't. Then instead think about how to attack b7. So bringing the knight on e5 is a possible strategy. So, well, yeah, Brian, it's not about playing style. It's more about what we want from chess. I want to win any single game, every single game. I want to win. If your task is to create a nice combination, even if it's unsound or semi-sound. Okay, fine. So bishop d7, king h4 to protect on g5. So we prevent the enemy queen's invasion in case if they sacrifice the knight on g5, so that we can use our knight. However, then queen a1 was played, so it's better than queen c3 because the queen also controls the a file. King g2, bishop e8. And now the knight goes to d2. So there is no invasion. Maybe king g2 was actually better to play right now d3. Bishop goes to d7. Knight goes to b3, and then from a3 it goes to a5. So they managed to defend it. How should we continue? Yeah, bishop a6. You can take on b7 and then play bishop a6, but just bishop a6 right away works too. And now they cannot defend it. So their pieces are crowded and the bishop on d7 is the object of the attack. Yeah, then this pawn is lost and the h7 is a problem. So rook e7, how exactly do we win in such a case? Rook takes knight on d8. Yeah, that's right. Rook takes knight. And then it's it. So you take one of the rooks, you take on a6, you have two protected pass pawns, and well, soon the game was over. Queen c8, knight e7, and then rook a6. So what did happen in the game? Well, the position was closed on the king side, and that allowed white to win a few tempi, to quickly bring their rooks to the only open file, which is the A file, and then focus on the attack on the B7. And because of no space, there was no possibility for black to defend the pawn on B7. Okay, let's continue with the next example. Well, what do we have here? It's the Carlsbad pawn structure. So it was Queen's Gambit originally played, and white executed a minority attack, but the c6 pawn is protected, so you cannot really win it. That's why white instead focused on the attack through the A file. What do you think? Which move to start with? Queen b6 to attack the rook. Okay, so possible. Queen b6, maybe they can play queen d6 to defend it. So with queen b6, you don't achieve really much. Well, I think it should be b6, but let's decide. b6 can be played even later, so let's fight for the A file first. The rook moves. Now they threaten to do a counterattack, so we have to push b6. Rook goes to d7. Rook goes to a7. King goes to there. What now? What do you think about this position? What white should be to trade queens? Well, first of all, he may not trade, and you have to calculate what happens in case of f5. But even if we do trade, what do you think? Is it winning or not? I think it's not winning, but it's definitely better. I mean, if this endgame happens, let's say c5 is not possible, the rook occupies c5, then the king comes to d3, and then you can prepare f3, e4. And maybe because due to this passivity of black pieces, you can achieve something. Maybe you'll create a second pass pawn or come closer with the king. Doubling the rooks, yes, but in this exact position in the endgame, I don't really see the point. Why to double the rooks? Because once you move the rook away from the c file, they will play c5. Right now, they cannot. And if you hold the rook on c5, they still won't be able. So rook c5 seems like a more solid strategy with no counterplay. This didn't happen in the game. Instead, they decided to file. f5 was played, queen c2 now, rook e7, and queen b4 followed by rook c5. Well, yeah, well, you'll see. So g3, why g3? Because f4 is coming. Well, actually, f4 is not coming, then the queens are traded. But in this position, f4, queen takes queen, king takes, pawn takes, and rook e4. But rook e4 drops the pawn on b7. Okay. Yeah, maybe he is not forced to play g3. He'd better play h3 or h4. Yeah, that's why I think h3 or h4, but he played g3. And why I don't like it, because later it resulted into a weakness of the king. So that's the reason why white didn't have chances to win here. So rook a8 was played, but rook a4. So the rooks are traded, fine. And in this position, after rook a7, the b7 is hanging. How can you defend it? You definitely cannot play with the queen, because if you play with the queen, they take on c6, taking advantage of the pin. If you play rook e7, I don't know. Maybe they play queen c5 and invade your camp and then try to checkmate on the back rank. That's why here Alekhine preferred this passive defense. There is no pin, so nothing to be afraid of. h4, h5, a common prophylaxis. This pawn structure is considered to be the strongest in most endgames, especially rook endgames. King goes to g2, but queen e6. Queen d3, so it's not queen e4, it's just king g6, and this is where both players agreed to a draw. Why? What do you think? What's the main reason why this position cannot be won? Well, but why white cannot progress? In order to win, what white should create here? Yeah, so there is no postpone. I would instead make a slightly different definition. So there is no second weakness. So that's why we cannot initiate a principle of two weaknesses. One is b7, but it's only one. The rest of the black position is fine. And moreover, if we make our queen like if we move our queen to a better position, if we think that there is such a position, they will invade our camp and try to bother our king on g2, and that may affect our position too. So it can be a perpetual check or a perpetual attack of the pawn on f2. So, well, if the king was safer, maybe there was a possibility to uh, use the queen fully and try to invade the enemy camp. So if, let's say, this pawn is here, then queen d2, queen g5, or queen f4 would become possibilities. That would be the second target. But now queen d2 and d4 means sacrificing this pawn, which allows them to play this move and defend g5 successfully. So because there is no second weakness, you don't win only by possessing the A file. So what this game is about, that the A control over the A file doesn't guarantee a win, but ties enemy pieces down to the defense of the B7. You should either find how to attack B7 with more resources or create the second target on the other side of the board. In previous game, it was the attack through the H file. So my ideas, let me go back to the previous. So we combine the ideas here with H takes G6, opening the position there with a pass pawn on that side. And we played H6 only when we are sure that we have a sufficient number of attackers on B7. So we win a few tempi and we can bring our resources, our rooks, to attack B7. That was the second target. Okay, fine. So we have one more game to go over. The game between these two unknown players. However, before we proceed, let me remind you that our workshops are free. However, if you like this content, if you want to support, you can use this link to donate. For example, Okay, so it's working a little slowly. I'm sharing the screen. Oh yeah, so this is the link I wanted to show. It works easily. So you can, for example, click on the button. It redirects you to the window where you can enter the amount that you want to donate. So you enter any amount and then you click PayPal. So if you have PayPal, this option works for you. A pop-up window appears, then you have to enter your PayPal account and send the payment directly to my account. I would really appreciate any help. The second way of doing it is through Wise. So just through this link. If you have Wise, it works even better. Okay, let's continue with our last example. Okay, what do you think? Well, white tried to attack on the king side here. They brought their pieces, they grabbed some space with f5, but it looks like the position is still approximately equal. They don't have enough resources to checkmate, so they definitely should make a rook leave. They maybe should use their g pawn. What black should do? Black has more space, and because of the pawn on d4, and because black cannot initiate anything on the king side, they should focus on the queen side. And opening the a file would really help them. So that's why, which move to start? What do you think? a5, a4. Well, yes, thanks, Dan. b5 first, because if you play a5 first, you let them play a4. Now you can play b5, but this means that you open two files, the a and the b, and you operate through the a file, but let your opponent to attack your position through the b file. So that's why you'd better have only one file open that you have the control over. That's why with b5 first. Here they'd better start with g4 right away, queen e7, for example, rook f2, some preparation, and maybe you had to play g6 to get more space to defend your king. So this, g5, f5, and if queen h6, it seems that they have a perpetual check. Because blocking with the queen means you lose on d6, and then you can lose there. That's why you would have to play king h8, and they would repeat the position with queen h6, queen g6. So, but of course it could not happen. It's just a possible scenario. Maybe black would defend the position in a different way. But g4 and g5 is definitely what is required from white. They instead played slower. They played knight h4. First, they wanted to bring the rook. So a5, rook lift. Rook goes to h3. This is a very common strategy. So People prefer to do a rook lift, thinking about something like that, and then maybe a sacrifice on h7, which may lead to a win. Well, how exactly? If the knight is there, rook takes, queen h5, king g8, queen h8, king f7, queen f8, mate. But there can be deviations. It's possible to take on g6, then pawn takes or queen takes, and there can be problems. So here immediate actions are required. And because of that, queen d7 was played. Because now knight g6 means pawn takes, and the queens should be exchanged. If, for example, we don't play this move, but let's say take, I think they would take first. Let's say we do rook a2, then knight g6 is coming. So how does it work? This, and if you do queen d7 this time, you already lose. Check, this, check, and checkmate on h7. So that's why prophylaxis is required too. So queen g3, a takes b3, a takes b3, rook a2. Now knight g6 doesn't look so good. If, let's say, knight g6 is played in this position, how can you parry it? With rook f7 at the moment, possible. Yeah, rook f7 is possible, I think. Oh, rook f7, they can play knight h7. Oh, rook h7, sorry. King takes, queen checkmates on h8. No. Rook f7 seems to be premature. So I was thinking about doing this, and then playing h6. I can hardly imagine that the h6 can be attacked. Bishop g4, okay. Then you want to deliver a check, sacrifice a rook and play g7, okay. So f5 takes, queen e5. No, I don't like it. So queen e7. Queen e7 and then this. Okay, fine. So knight g6, what else there is? Yeah, bishop g6 seems like the best strategy. Okay, fine. So queen e1 was played instead. Already inaccuracy. Queen goes to a7. Rook goes to a3. And bishop f7. It is a helpful move because you can bring the second rook. You can sacrifice on b3 if you need to take advantage of this pin. Well, they now have to defend. They play this move to bring the knight back to the game. So here white decided that they cannot attack on the king side anymore and brought their pieces back to the to the second rank to defend the queen side. Rook e8, knight f3, and queen a5 trading queens. Without queens on the board, the pawn on c2 becomes weaker. For example, this, and nobody defends the bishop, so this is coming. Let's say they try to play bishop here. What do you think you should do here? c4. Yeah, I agree, actually. c4 should be played. Well, I'm not sure if c4 right away. Maybe let's trade rooks. But actually, no. c4 looks good still. And even c3 can be played then. You can get enough defenders, attackers of the c2. You can bring your knight to b4. It takes time, but it's still possible. And even if they put all their pieces to the defense, at least there can be maybe knight a2 at some point. So let's say they play maybe king g1, c3, g4, kind of a counterattack. Then rook here, the second rook there. There can be a sacrifice with some checkmate if it is a checkmate. If it's not, then don't sacrifice. Okay, so queen a5. Queen a5, they decided to not trade queens. They played queen d1. Now queen c3. This is a very nice position of the queen because it cannot be attacked and it puts pressure on c2. Well, g4, still a counterplay. g5 now, but it's already too late. The second rook goes to the second rank, and now they have to play knight e1. Prophylaxis. Rook g1 was played, and how to play in this position. What do you think? Bishop takes b3, it was actually already an accuracy. This move was played in the game, you'll see it. Yes, and bishop b3, if they take, then rook a2, you threaten with mate. That's why they cannot take your queen, so what they have to do is maybe take there. And this is a winning endgame because of the c pawn. So, but instead, in this position, it was possible to play this move. And after the second tactical strike, knight e4. So what does knight e4 do? You'll see it. They could play rook g2, and that would help to defend the position. Now two pieces are hanging. So f2 is protected, this is hanging, and well, it doesn't mean black is losing. They can play maybe knight g5 here and then sacrifice one bishop, but for 3 pawns, and that should be still fine, but not winning already. Instead of bishop b3, it should be c4. c4, b takes c4, b takes c4, rook g2 in this position. But rook b8, rook a8, rook a1, and then the second rook goes to a1 because of this knight, which doesn't allow white to connect pieces quickly. Instead, they played bishop h5, which is fine. Knight takes e4, and this is where they took on e4. So how do we win? We win with this move, bishop c2. They cannot defend the h2. Rook takes rook, and so queen or rook, what do you think? With the rook, well, your king can be weak then. So if you take with a rook, can they play something like that to threaten your king? So no, well, it looks like a problem, because even if you find queen b3 or queen c4, queen g7 is checkmate then. So that's why you have to take with a queen, and they have to trade, otherwise you checkmate. But this is completely winning because these pawns are already far advanced. So rook b1, b4. Bishop d1, it seems it's possible to control these pawns through the light squares, but how to play? Yes, d3. Actually, this time, such a scenario with when two pawns are stronger than the rook works really well. So this and then b3 and nothing can be done. So Brian suggested a similar idea in the first game today, but that time it didn't work so well. This time the pawns are far advanced. So king g1, king e7. h3, king goes to d6, king f1, king c6. Rook b3, but well, now if we do this, we lose there. Just rook c3. Two pawns are stronger than the bishop. They played king e1 because capturing means the loss. King e1, c2 then. And now the bishop has to be sacrificed, but this with extra pawn is absolutely winning. So king e1 now instead, king b5, king d2, take this, and after this move they resigned. So why did they resign? Who can tell me? Why it's not possible to continue the game, for example, play this move or this move? Now let's start with bishop a2, let's say. Three connected passed pawns. That's right, actually. So you can occupy this and push further. Well, if this move actually... how can you play this? This. Bishop b1, then king b4. And it's hard to make a move, because king e3, king c3. If h4, it's h5. And that's it. So this is over. If, let's say, bishop goes to d1, then it seems that the king should go that way and occupy d4, and then c3, c2. If king e3 now, then b3 works. Then after b2, the bishop cannot stop it. So the king must go back, but then king d4 and c3 is coming with a check. If this move, then you can just capture the pawns if you want. Then what else? This move works well, but I would prefer capturing pawns. Fine, so this is how the game ended. So this time there was an invasion through the A file. The attack on the king side was not sufficient. And finally, this tactical idea of a sacrifice of the bishop happened. It was a little unsound, but still wasn't a significant mistake, because this sacrifice, if white plays properly, didn't lead to a winning position for white. The game would be approximately equal if black would play properly. So that's why it's quite common. So you double your rooks there, and then sacrifice when you think that your rooks can do much on the second rank. Please have this idea in mind. But generally speaking, if you don't know what to do, but you have your rook already on the A file, or you can bring it quickly to the A file, why not to play A5, A4 and open the position? At least this will tie enemy pieces to the defense of the B2 or C2 pawns. And this means that your opponent no longer can do, for example, a kingside attack or something else in the center. But this mainly happens in closed positions. If you initiate such a strategy in the open position, most likely while you organize this invasion, your opponent will infiltrate your camp through the other file, for example. So when either one or two files are open, then invasion through the A file works. But if not, if there are many files open and the center is open, for example, you may be faced with a counterplay, because all these maneuvers with your rooks to the A file require tempi. So it works if you can do it quickly, or if the position is closed, where slow strategies work. Okay, fine. So we are done for today. I'll try to fix the problem with my computer lag before the next event. There is a group class on Friday as usual. I'm not sure if I'm going to play this Tuesday in the title Tuesday. I'll instead focus on recording of the course. And what else? So if you have any questions, you're welcome. If not, we can finish our session for today. Okay, thank you for joining. See you next Sunday at the next workshop.